evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and just when you thought that the demon train was back on track, there's another derailment that brings the demon juggernaut to a halt. Joining me tonight to dissect another disappointing showing in the heart of the country is George. Good evening, George.
Good evening to Andy. Good evening to Binman. Good evening to all our faithful listeners. And I'm going to be booking a trip to Alice Springs because the football club has only proven on the weekend it's a great place for a holiday.
Well, that's a good one. Also joining us tonight to make sense of the stats is B-Man. Good evening, B-Man.
Good evening, Andy. Good evening, George. Good evening, Demonland. Massive, very disappointing and super frustrating game of footy, wasn't it? And that first 10 minutes, you can always tell in that first 10 minutes if we're on or a team's on, and I still thought we were going to win the game, but just another excruciating kicking performance, kicked ourselves out of it. It feels like we've seen this movie before, and we've seen the movie before in Alice Springs. Let's hope this game isn't a reflection of where our season went after Freo demolished us last year at the same time.
Man, I can't even get you to be brief when we've got a guest on the show. So
that was brief.
That was for you. That was brief. But before we get into the malice in Alice, we do have a very special guest joining us tonight on the podcast. Our guest tonight is a name that needs no introduction for D's fans, a high-flying, smooth-moving modern ruckman who helped redefine the role during his stellar career. 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗲 played 268 AFL games across two clubs, beginning with Fremantle as the number one draft pick in 1994 before becoming a fan favourite at the Melbourne Football Club, where he played 236 games between 1998 and 2008. A 2004 All-Australian, 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗲 medal winner and one of the most athletic and skilled big men of his era, Jeff combined incredible endurance with pinpoint ruck work and was a key figure in Melbourne's run to the 2000 grand final. Since retiring, Jeff has remained passionate about the art of ruck work, and he's channeled that passion into his latest venture, First Use, a dedicated online coaching platform designed to help aspiring rucks at all levels refine their craft. And built from years of elite experience and innovation, First Use offers structured skill development, positional insights and techniques, as well as mentoring to help players and coaches gain a competitive edge. The program is supported by an engaging presence across YouTube and social media, where Jeff shares expert tips, breakdowns and tutorials that showcase the intricacies of the ruck position and more. We're absolutely thrilled to have Jeff join us tonight to talk all things demons, the evolution of the ruck role, and how First Use is helping shape the next generation of AFL big men. Welcome back to the Demonland podcast, Jeff White.
Hello, Andy. Hello, George and the Bin Man. Thanks for having me on, and also to all your listeners, the Demon faithful. Thank you for tuning in, and thanks for having me on.
An absolute pleasure. So, Jeff, let's start with your newest venture, First Use. So I've been following your journey closely on social media, but for those who might not be familiar with your work post-footy, can you tell us what First Use is and how it came to be?
It came about a couple of years ago where I was asked, obviously post-footy career, been asked a number of times to help out with the ruck duties at certain clubs, that I wanted to broaden myself, not just be stuck with one club. I wanted to be able to provide the resources and the knowledge that I do have across Australia. And so that's what the journey sort of started. It was found that there was a need in the market for assisting rucks of all ages, male and female. And then that progressed to, thanks for helping the rucks, can you help the coach because he needs to work out his stop plays? And then it worked out that it sort of just progressed from there. So First Use, even though it started as a ruck, it's become a really deep passion of mine to be a coach mentor. And it's taken me a while to get back into the footy circles, to be honest. And I think I credit all that to radio. I do ABC Grandstand. I've been doing that for 12 years now. And the thing with radio, yes, I've got a head for radio, just trying to eliminate all those sort of jokes that are coming through. But you have to have a really good understand, or a way to deliver the message in a very visual way. So it's like a book. You've got to, I see George has got 1,000 books behind him right now. You've got to actually put the listener into the what you're seeing. So you got to visualize that for him. And I think it was a couple of years ago, I had a gentleman reach out to me saying, hey, can you come and I would love you to meet my grandfather. And so this was just where I live. So I met this gentleman, mad Collingwood supporter, so don't hold that against him. But he was blind, and he said his favourite commentator is me because I'm able to deliver the game for him and he can visually understand what's happening. So I felt that was a really good a sort of, acknowledgement for the way I deliver, and whether it's analytical, expert, or see how I see the game unfolding. And that just actually inspired me to start, delivering it that way, not only the rucks, but also across the whole facets of the game. So, and that's that's what I'm really passionate about now.
How different is teaching the ruck craft in 2025 different compared to how you learnt it coming through in the 90s and during the 2000s when you're playing?
Well, I think the biggest change is when they brought in the across the line rule last year. That was back in my time as a Matty Primus rule, where he'd come across, and certainly against me and against the other mobile rucks like Luke Darcy and so on and so forth. So that's been the biggest change, and you can see that from junior level, females, males, and how to position themselves and how to work that out. So from a ruck coaching perspective, it's about providing different angles, working on different things. You've got to, like Luke Jackson's probably the one who can really be nimble on his toes and be able to negate the likes of Wits, who he did on the weekend, which I saw live, which was it was outstanding to watch. But also, the likes of Briggs, Sherry, these bigger type rucks who try to get across the line really early. So my role, I've got to obviously identify who the ruck is, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and then be able to adapt to that. So that's first and foremost a bit of a bio on what the ruck is, and then actually work to their strengths in that way. And we use an app that I'm able to slow down. You'll see if you've seen my YouTube channel, you'll see that it's slowed down. I draw lines. It's the app that I use. So for the coaches and rucks and athletes who I work with all over Australia, I'm able to deliver that on a daily basis as a chat feature as well. So it really gives me an opportunity. It gives them an opportunity to look at it in their own time, but it also gives them a bit of like a clearer understanding of how they're playing, what they need to work on. I'm able to really slow it down and, their footwork as a ruck, or slow it down in the forward half as a stop play. So it really gives me a lot of scope, a lot of information to be able to dissect it and starting positions and so on and so forth. So it's really good, and I just love it. I love doing it. I do all my reviews on Monday and Tuesday for all my athletes. And then with the AFL games, I try and pick what I think is really beneficial or what's not. I don't really go for the topical ones for the weekend. I try to go for more educational side of things. So really love that, and I just love being a coach mentor.
Can I just jump in, Andy, before you roll on the next one?
Go ahead.
Just two things from what you just said, Jeff. The first one is you mentioned Jackson. Did you see any similarities in the way you played and Jackson, the way he plays? That's sort of almost potentially a second midfielder, athletic, gets around the ground. That's question one. And the other question was just actually I was going to ask you about that software that you use for your analysis. Is that sort of standard sort of post-match review software that clubs have, or is that something that's specialist? So
certainly Luke Jackson, very similar. And I love that he was put in the midfield on the weekend when Darcy came into the ruck. So it was a really good combination. I watched the game live. I was there commentating. Quite like that synergy. And I think the other important thing with that too, it'd be interesting to see if they do that when it's dry. It was really, really wet here when they play Saturday. So that made sense. He was getting the ball and he was nimble and he runs around like a midfielder. The thing it's really impressive with Luke is that his ability when the ball goes up in the air, this is what a lot of people don't really understand too much, but when the ball goes in the air, everyone else's eyes go in the air, but that's when he moves. And that's where it's really hard for other rucks to actually try and figure out where he is. So there's a really strong art to that. and there's a lot of footwork, a lot of energy that you need. Remember Neil Danaher used to say to me, you got to be like a cat on a hot 10 roof. As soon as that ball goes up, you're moving, you're agile. Don't let them, don't get in a wrestle. And that's what Luke does. So it's really impressive. The app that I use is called On Form. So I got it from a golf coach, actually. He was doing analysis of my golf swing, which was going all over the place. And I said, that's an impressive app. And so I thought of an idea of putting some games in there or some of the analysis. So that's where it stemmed from. So I use it on the desktop to do my YouTube videos, but I also import it on my app on the phone so I can be mobile with that as well. So it's a really, really helpful tool. Gives me a really good analysis of, especially with the aerial shots, whether it's behind the goals and stuff like that. So it's a really, really cool app to use. So
the guys that you're mentoring or coaching, how are you getting their vision from games? Are they being filmed? Are you organising that? Or because I know the VAFA in Victoria or in Melbourne, you videotape a lot of the games or most of the games. So how are you getting the vision?
So, for instance, Norwood use Huddle. Yep. So they just add me the login. So I go in there and I have the ruck that I look after and I just go through all these clips.
Oh, so they break down the clips for each
they
play.
break down the clips, Premier Data do it as well. You can go to the actual player themselves, whether they code it by their number or they normally do number and their surname. So I just go in there, or you can go boundary throw-ins, you can go in centre bounces. Yep. So you just try and dissect it that way. So it's really, really cool how they do it. So they're probably the ones I use. And then with the AFL, I basically wait for the AFL to actually upload or download, the game. Yep. So it takes a while. Yeah. Normally it's about 24 hours. Then I just screen flow it from my phone. So I just go through it in certain parts. Then I push that together in CapCut. And then I import it into OnForm, and that's where I get the slow-mo sort of stuff. So it's a little bit of work. Actually, it's a lot of work. But I love it. I think the most time-consuming part is actually identifying key moments and trying to piece that all together. And then I just go through the video, slow-mo. Like the other day, the Collingwood one, probably spent 4 or 5 hours on that, trying to put it all together. But I really enjoy it. Helps me a lot. And because when I'm commentating too, I can see it, but until you slow it down, and bin man would know this, you don't really get an appreciation of. That's when you actually get appreciation, of where they're actually flowing, because you look at it and go, how'd they get that centre bounce? And then you slow it down and go, the sweeper wasn't in the right place, or the blocker didn't do their role, or forward 50, how'd they get that goal? That was because of this, this, and this. So I find it really interesting from that point of view. And last year I was doing just snippets that I was posting on, I still call it Twitter, but X. And then I thought that I would love to still provide that free avenue for people to learn, but really restricted on the time limit on the app. So that's why I've gone to YouTube, so people can still watch it for free, which is the main thing, but I can be able to provide that long analysis of it. And that was the feedback I was getting. Everyone was saying, go to YouTube. We want to be able to show it to our we want to be able to show it to our teams. Can you do a longer version? So that's what I guess the fans drove that.
Well, you've really embraced YouTube and social media to share that knowledge. How have players and coaches and everyday fans like us responded to seeing the ruck craft broken down into such clear and accessible, and I guess something that's in a visual way?
Well, yeah, I'm not name dropping at all, but this is actually kind of a cool story. So this is Collingwood versus Brisbane. So this was the Anzac Day. Easter Thursday. So the commentary box is Channel 7's next to us and Fox Footy, and on the right side is Triple M. So we're all bunched together at the Gabba. So I was just walking through the hallway and I hadn't seen Nathan Buckley for a while. So, Whitey, what are you doing here? I said, ABC. Mate, I love your stuff. The analysis you do, no one does this. We really love it. I said, thanks, mate. I'd love you to promote it. And then as soon as I had said promote it, Brian Taylor walked around the corner and said, is that you doing all that analysis? I love that stuff that you're doing. So that really gave me I hadn't seen these guys for a very long time. That really gave me a lot of good feedback, especially coming from two well-respected footy identities. And so really loved it. So I've just expanded my knowledge. So not only doing the stop plays and the ruck craft, but also if you see my latest videos, I'm doing how it's structuring. And one of the ones I did a while ago, probably going back a month and a half ago now, was it's probably the most viewed one I've had was the West Coast Eagles, and the point I was trying to raise was that they were dump kicking, so they weren't using their hands, and that's what Sydney did on the weekend. Actually, they grabbed the ball, just dump it. So you work so hard to get the ball back, but then you just bomb it. You're kicking it back into their hands, and so they've totally changed. No, I'm not saying whether they've watched my video, but I had a lot of Eagles fans going, "This is what's wrong with us. This is what we're doing wrong." And it was almost like it was a light bulb moment for them to actually see that. And so I got a lot of feedback from that, and it was really cool to see. And I'm not picking on anyone. There's a few videos on Duggan, but I'm not picking on anyone. I'm just showing the facts and what I see it. So I'm not being critical. So I'll say if it's a good play, but I just commentate the way I commentate, and that comes from the ABC sort of background to commentating what I see. So that's how I piece it all together. It's good fun, and I love it.
Andy, can I just jump in with a question I had for later on? Probably fits better here. As long-time listeners of Demonland will attest, and probably even anyone who's listened to the last 2 or 3 podcasts, one of my huge pet hates is just the sort of how thin the analysis of footy is, and like as someone who's loved footy all my life, like just love it. I just fascinated by the evolution of it and the tactical. I just think it's a unique sport in terms of how quickly it evolves, and I just find the coverage across the media as a generalisation it doesn't help me understand the game at all. And so I'm really curious, because one of the things I loved about the video, the D's Brisbane one that you wrapped up, was that combination of visuals, but just the analysis, and some basic things like what's the fat side and off the line, where you explained what it is. So, that's a long way sort of to say, what's your sort of take on the state of football analysis in the media? And I'm guessing you've already mentioned this, that's part of your motivation to be doing the YouTube stuff. But yeah, I'm just curious for someone who works in the media, so don't want you to drop anyone in it, but yeah, what's your take on how the game is covered from an analytical perspective in terms of, I guess, the role of the media to educate fans of footy?
Yeah, it's an interesting point you raise, because I get so many comments. About this should be on TV. Well, I've got my own TV show now, so just follow my YouTube channel. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people are really excited about what Adam Simpson and John Longmire do, but it's only a small snippet of what it is. And then, what is it? The First Crack might do a couple of things. I like what Lee Montagna does. I'm a fan of his, and how he is able to be analytical and a lot. But what I find with those shows is they're very stat heavy.
Yeah, stats first and then explanation. Like as if that explains the.
Yeah, and like one of the perfect examples was, was it Freo won out of the centre against Collingwood, 20-8 out of the centre. You think you win by 10 goals if that happens. They obviously lost, and that was the game over in Freo. So just recently, where they had those 5 players out. So I look at that and go, well, that was game structure. That was team defence. That was them putting him under the pump, kicking it long and intercept marks. Then Freo lost out of the centre against Western Bulldogs early in the year, and they beat them. So sometimes people are really, really quick to jump on the stats, but don't actually oversee the whole facets of the game. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to dissect certain parts and why that's just happening. And I watch a lot of games, and then I'll take notes and see if that's anything worth doing. When Brisbane played Gold Coast Suns, they just dominated in the centre and around stoppages. So I had to try and figure out why is that happening. Well, Dunkley was manned up against Real, and Real only had one clearance for the whole game. It's like, well, duh. So but I think a lot of shows, just to sort of narrow back to your question, a lot of shows, there's a lot that's period. There is a lot right now. So, and they tend to cover a lot of, what I say, sort of, it's sort of, controversial sort of stuff. Yeah. So they're not, yes, they've got to sell newspapers and headlines and all that sort of clickbait, whatever you want to call it. But then they sort of really need to refocus and be nice if they say, well, Sydney's so poor at the moment, and that's what they're hounding on. But watching the game, I could see that they're bomb kicking all the time. They weren't using their hands. If you slow it down, there's so many times where they got the ball back, could have used their hands. So yes, have your opinion in that sense, but also dissect what they're doing wrong. And I think that's what the media lacks to do. So that's why I'm trying to come in and provide a bit of an analysis on why sides are going really well and why sides are not performing the way they should be performing. And if you're going to ask me about Melbourne, I'm so sorry, but I didn't actually get to watch the whole game, so I can't give you all the demon faithful that are listening right now. I can't dissect that right now because I didn't watch the whole game.
Not much to dissect.
We don't want to talk about it.
I have an excuse. My twins are playing footy, so I love watching my boys play footy. So that's my excuse.
That's
enough. A good excuse.
Do you see this kind of specialised online coaching becoming a core part of club development pathways, especially for regional or interstate kids who don't have access to elite level ruck coaching? So take your son Kalani as an example. He's had you in his corner growing up, in a non-AFL centric state. So if you were just a regular footy dad, I imagine a player like Kalani or some kid from some country town, he'd benefit for something like First Use, and it could be a game changer, not just for the player, but for their coaches and their club as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to achieve. I mean, last year with the AFL, there was 25,000 listed coaches, and that's just the head coaches. That's a lot of coaches.
Yeah. 25,000.
25,000, yeah. And I do a part-time work with the AFL as well. So AFL Queensland have asked me to come on. This is through the synergy of First Use. So we have a partnership with the AFL. So it's really good. So I work hand in hand. But one of the biggest things that come out with coaches in particular, I'm just talking about coaches, is training drills. What are the latest training drills? So I actually have a AI app for First Use that I created myself at the end of last year. But in the process at the moment, I've been approached by an investor, which is really exciting. And we want to basically what our aim is to create the first ever AFL brain, so to speak. People want to have access to, training drills. What can I do with physios? What can I do with diet? What can I do with? So there's a whole range of different things that come in with the game of sport, game of AFL. And I think you touched on it before, Bin Man, when you said it's the most unique sport in the world. There's nothing like it. So we're in the process of doing that at the moment, and really exciting, cutting edge sort of stuff. We want to be able to put the knowledge of all AFL into the pocket of people, and whether it's a play, and it's also to the mental side. Like I get asked by so many parents, "Oh, my son or my daughter's been dropped. What do I do?" Or at a rolled ankle, "What do I do here?" They're out of form. What are training aids that can help with their marking? Or there's a whole range of different things that come with the sport. Not only just the tactical side. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to get involved in. I really love it. Took me a while, as I said earlier, to get back into having that passion for that. But the mix of the radio, mix of obviously watching my boys play footy, and I think that break was really beneficial for me. Stepping away from the game to be able to then provide my, the freedom to speak what I think is really important to the game. So, and that's in all age levels.
So it sounds like you do have future plans of expanding First Use beyond ruckcraft. I can see it in the video that you did today. Bringing. Do you have plans to bring in other specialists? For forward craft, defence, even goal kicking. And I know a certain club out there that could benefit from goal kicking practice right now.
Yeah, that's that. I'm going to cover everything. I really want to cover everything, and it's also the growth of the sport in women is huge.
Yeah.
See it from a junior level. So there's different aspects to training and coaching that as well. There's different tactics that go with that, the mindset, all that. So yeah, eventually I'd love to bring in that, and that's all part and parcel of just creating this really big ecosystem of what we're trying to build with our AI app, because I think that is the future. There's no question about that, and I want to be able to provide that resource that's an instant media for people to be able to tap into. So there's a lot of things that we want to plan forward, and it's really exciting, and I just want to provide my knowledge, provide the content, provide what I see, give my analysis, and just be able to be there and be able to help in some way.
And in a nutshell, how would you cure our kicking woes? Sorry.
I think I said this. I watch training clips. I'm a big advocate for training. I wish I could get to more of them, but obviously I can't with the location. But I like to watch training clips. That's where I get a lot of training clips, and the start of the game is where you can get a lot of knowledge, because you know what the teams are set up, what they're trying to do, what the homework during the week, and then things change throughout the course of the game. But training and the first centre bounce is really, really pivotal sort of stuff that I look at. One of the things I've noticed with the Ds that they haven't been using the Sharon with the yellow line down the middle of their footy. Now, that's actually a pretty cool design. I know that 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁 is involved in that. You might recall back in end of 2019, 2020, I think they started introducing it. Clary I remember watching a Port Adelaide game during the COVID one. It was against Port Adelaide at the Gabba. And I just noticed the field kicking was terrible. And then through pre-season, they introduced that yellow footy. And all of a sudden, snap, the kicking was – I haven't seen that for a while. So something I think they should implement, because the way that Sharon and the physics of that works is that if you hit slightly off the yellow line on that seam, it wobbles everywhere. So it really sharpens up. It's like I teach Kalani, or even all my twins as well. If you're struggling with the marking, start marking a medicine ball, because it hardens up your hands, gives you the timing. So when you mark a footy, it feels like a feather. It feels really light. And you get a lot of confidence from that. So that's what I've seen missing at training. So whether that's a correlation with field kicking, goal kicking, I don't know. But I haven't seen that for a little bit. So I might have missed the clips. So someone probably out there deeming, oh, no, I saw it the other week. Yeah, but from what I've seen, I haven't seen it. So that's really something that's could change slightly. And, whether that helps or not with their goal kicking, unsure about that. But I have played an Ällice. I played Ällice 2009. I actually was playing for Redland Bay. We played the Northern Territory team up there, and it's so blowy there because there's no stadiums. There's no grandstand, obviously. And the day I played was really, really windy. So
it wasn't yesterday. It wasn't yesterday. They kept on saying on the coverage that it was breathless. There you go. A bit of wind. So, yeah.
Yeah, but so maybe it might be that maybe just going back to basics of that footy. I don't know.
Better than my solution of removing the two goalposts and just having the point posts. I reckon we'd still probably miss it.
Do you think someone's field kicking, so in-game kicking, can be improved over time once they're, mature aged already? Like, I understand goal kicking, maybe you can improve the technique, but I'm saying just that instinctual stuff, can that ever be ironed out of someone if they're doing it wrong?
Yeah, of course. A lot of it's a bit of balancing stuff too. Neil used to get us to kick off balance, kick off one leg, kick across our body, different angles, practice different things. So it just really sharpens up your it's like a golfer trying to adjust something in their swing. You've just got to practice over and over and over. So, there's no question you can practice that. The thing with the thing with training these days is that there's a lot centered around how much time you can be out there and how much kicking you got to do. There's a lot of components like that really can hinder how much time you spend. But I think the footy club players in general know what they need to work on. So it's not hard to sort of say, hey, I really need to work on my left foot. I noticed early in my career at the D's is to come through the centre, and I used to be pushed. So coming across the left, I used to get pushed on my right side a lot. People trying to force me on my left foot. So Neil I remember him taking me into the office one day and say, right, next you just got to keep practicing on your left foot because you become more dangerous to the midfield. And that's what you do. You identify what you need to work on and you just go to do it. And whether that takes you out of certain drills at training, you're professional athletes. You should have the courage to speak up and say, hey, I need to really work on my, this part of the area. I want to do this. And then working with the constraints of training, obviously. If you've got tactical sort of stuff you got to work on. But I think it's really important that you have a little bit of ownership in your own game as well.
George, you want to take it away now?
Sorry, just got to unmute there. Thanks, Jeff, for your time. In your breakdowns, you often talk about players getting sucked in, particularly when the opposition send extras to the contest. How do you stop those players from overcommitting in these moments? That's
a brilliant question, George. I love it. Must be all those books behind you. You've come up with that resource. It's actually been asked. That's probably the number one, because I talk a lot about balance around the contest. People always say, "What's the balance? What do you mean?" It's really hard to. It's hard to. Well, I wouldn't say it's hard to train. It's hard to identify in the moment. Cameron Bruce, a good friend of mine now at Brisbane, but when I'm going to go back, I think it was 2014 when they played the Eagles. Is that when Ben Man might have to go to the stats there? When they won the grand final against the Eagles, might have been 2014, and they were the architects of balance. And what balance is actually having trust in your teammate to go at the ball or go at the player with the ball, and you not getting sucked into that contest. In fact, going to the balance of the receiver. So I think I might have put that actually in the latest Demons video. There was a play out on the wing in the last quarter where Fritsch actually went left.
Yeah. Twice, he didn't go to the contest. Yeah.
Correct. So instead of going to the contest, he turned his head and went to the receiver. And they forced a hold on the ball. That's the balance. And you've got to see what happens is when kids grow up, play the footy, there's two things they do. They ball watch and they all gravitate towards the ball. So ball watch could be, you're 30 metres away from the contest. You can't impact that contest, but your opponent's gone to your right. He's spread out, and you haven't picked him up. That's ball watching. And then the second part is that you've already got two of your teammates at the source, which is the ball, but you go in as a third, and then that person who's got the ball, which is the opponent, gets a hand pass, and it goes to your direct opponent or one of their teammates. So there's no balance involved. So that's what we call balance. And that's what I speak a lot about in my videos, because it's really, really important. Because players these days, you would have seen with Jack Viney's brother, Max, who does a lot of that jiu-jitsu sort of stuff. They do a lot of that to work core strength, rolling their shoulders, protecting the ball, getting their hands up in the air, taking the tackle, getting their hands off. That's all the strategy they do to actually take the tackle and then give the hands off. But if you've got two guys going there, or girls, then they give the hand pass off. You eliminate three people in one go. So then you're on the back foot straight away. So that's where you've got to have balance. You've got to be really disciplined to hold off and then be able to wait and then go to where the receiver's going to go, and that's how you can shut them down. So go back to 2014. That's what Hawthorn did. That's why they won by 70 points. They were able to have balance. And I remember speaking to 𝗟𝗀𝘀𝗁 literally 2 hours after the game, and I said, your balance at the contest was unbelievable. Teddy goes, yeah, that's the best we've ever put together. And that's where it sort of pretty much come from. It's been around for a long time, but that was on display, for everyone to see and how effective it was.
Moving on, when you look at today's ruckman, who do you think is the most versatile? You've got grapplers like Grundy and O'Brien, athletes like Jackson that you spoke about before and 𝗟𝗀𝗃, and then perhaps the more complete types like 𝗙ecie𝗹𝗰𝘀𝗁, Tim English and Max, of course. Who's the most flexible of the lot?
Flexible as in could go forward, play different positions, or flexible as in could adapt to different
adapt to different roles.
Adapt to different roles. I think, put Max aside. I think he's the best ruckman I've ever seen. Best ruck of this, whatever you want to call it, he's the best ruck I've ever seen. So put him aside. I think Luke Jackson is probably the one that springs to mind pretty quickly. I'd say 𝗟𝗃𝗁's worked on that a lot. I noticed 𝗟𝗃𝗁 when he first came through, 2019-20. Going back to Cameron Bruce again, when he was at Carlton, he said, "I want you to have a look at this kid," and I thought he had some great qualities. Just need to work on his spread and he's obviously his size. Rucks take a while to sort of develop, as we all know, with Max, of course. I think those two really stand out. And you have to get 15 plus these days as a ruck. You have to become immobile. The days have gone where you win 30 hitouts, but you have 4 possessions. So you could get away with a little bit. Like O'Brien's not a real big stat getter around the ground, but what he does with his ruck tap, he's so tall, gets in the way. He actually is able to be pretty good with the way he hits the ball and directs it to his midfielders. Plus, he's got Rankin at his feet, so it helps. Look, I think probably Luke Jackson and 𝗟𝗃𝗁 really stand out for my mind.
Just before you go, George, when you say spread, is that code for fitness or?
Yeah, and being smart too, and be able to. One of the things I love about Max, so this is just he's obviously the yardstick. He's the premier ruck. When there's a free kick, the way and Demon people that are listening now, just have a look at how hard he spreads when the umpire makes a decision. And other rucks other rucks know this. When they played Richmond, was it the Anzac Eve one? He gave a free kick to 𝗟𝗃𝗁 over the shoulder, and Mac bolted. 𝗟𝗃𝗁 couldn't get it in his hands quick enough because he's basically said, if I got to kick this inside forward 50, I've got to eliminate Max because he's bolting down there, and Max nearly got it. There was a free kick he gave away to Fort at the Gabba. Fort got back, took too long. Who marked it inside forward 50? Max. So there's that. There's the smarts of that, but also smart running. So being able to come through the corridor, then be able to spread, but also the smart rucks. And it is a little bit fitness. I mean, look, I'll put my hand up. Nita and I were the worst 2K runners at the club. We were terrible. We always came last. We held hands on the finish line. That's how bad we were. But he was powerful, with his sprint work. I was good vertically, but I was also smart. I could read 2 plays ahead. So if I knew that I was running in the back line and Adam Uzo was near it, I knew exactly where to run. If I was running down the back line, Nathan Brown was really close. I knew where to run. So it's the smarts like that as well. So there's a combination of all that. You've got to be able to read 2 plays ahead. You've got to see where the spread is. You've got to see where where the gaps are, and you learn that over time. It evolves. And one of my biggest coaches on that was Jim Steins. He was a huge advocate for don't walk, just jog, but I'll get you in the position a lot quicker. Be able to look and jog. He used to say to me all the time. Look, jog. But yeah, it really helped me with my mobility around the ground.
Just following on from that question, are there any ruckmen today who are genuinely ambidextrous, able to tap effectively with both hands? and you often have highlighted in your podcast how much advantage can be gained from a ruck setup based on whether someone's right or left-handed.
You have been doing your homework, George. I really like these questions. Yes. And the reason why I say that is, the ones who can do it. So Max, 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗃, really good at it. And this is the effectiveness. I think Sherry's good at it as well. The effectiveness of the tap. So what I'm trying to explain here for people who are listening in is that you take someone like Spider Everett, for instance. He was really good with his left hand. He could not hold a cup of tea, cup of coffee with his right hand. So I'd stand on his left hand. So I'd minimize his effectiveness. Doesn't matter where it was on the ground. I went on his left-hand side because I knew he was terrible with his right hand. So you've got to identify. That's the homework you've got to do with your opposition rucks as well. You've got to identify what the strengths and weaknesses are. But those rucks that can do both hands are very effective because you're wrestling so much. Your body position's changing. You could be. 1 minute you could be going up your left hand, next minute it goes over to your right, so you've got to go with your right hand. So it's always forever changing. I used to practice that nonstop, left and right. And it's more so not in the centre bounce. You use your strength in the centre bounce because it's obviously trying to jump into people, but definitely around the ground you need to really adapt and be strong with both hands.
I'll just ask the one more question or else we will be here all night. This is so fascinating. So I'll give the others a chance to do it. How important is it for teams to have a genuine speedster coming off half-back to impact the centre bounce contests, or is that another case of players being sucked in?
Yeah, very important. You've seen how effective Noble and Rioli have been for the Suns this year. I reckon it's and you've seen already. Look at when Salem, you're not quick, but a great decision maker. So I think the halfback, the halfback flankers need to be really good decision makers. Pace, yes, that helps, but I think of Collingwood. They don't really have someone who's got pace, but they've got Houston, who's a really good decision maker, uses the ball really well. Wangan, he's quick, but uses the ball well.
He killed us on the weekend too.
Yeah, he's very effective and he's very damaging. So, yeah, you got to have I think if you've got both, quick and good decision maker, tick. But if they're not quick, they have to be a good decision maker. That's where Salem comes into play. He's so good. Even Judd McVee's really good decision maker. Rivers has obviously been really good down back as a decision maker, so they become really, really handy. Yes, it's and you think of Zorko too. Zorko's still a bit quick, but geez, his kicking can just chew you apart. And then you've got Kitty Coleman, who's I think is probably one of the best. We haven't seen the best of Kitty because he's been out for a year with the ACL, but I think he's the best kicker in the game, and he plays off the halfback, so it's a really important role. And a lot of clubs are looking for those types of players because a lot of clubs focus on that, when they talk about time in forward half. So they're trying to get the turnovers between the arcs, and that's where when you put it in the hands of those players, they can really chew you up.
Daniel Hoynes are big on this. He was saying that 8 of the top 10 rated players at the moment are halfback flankers. And so just, sort of picks up that importance of having good decision makers and good kicks off the halfback flank in terms of scoreboard impact. Where do you see Windsor at in that mix? Have you seen that?
Yeah, and that's what they're trying to develop him at. Yeah, I knew I missed one. That's a good pickup for you. They're developing in that because he's a good decision maker. Look, he's still learning his craft. He's second-year player. So still learning his craft, but certainly someone they're trying to evolve into that role. And the other important thing about it too is that what those halfbackers do is they cover that second or third layer of the defence. So if you think about, I'm just using Collingwood, for instance, because we're playing them this week. They'll bring up their half forwards in, they'll bring up Bobby Hill, They'll bring up Elliott. They'll bring up these half forwards, and then as soon as Houston gets it, look how much clearance he has. So he gets over that next layer. So that's why they find him really important. Is it is it Bailey Dale from Western Bulldogs is another one who's really quick off the half-back line and uses the ball well. So there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, so I guess that leads into my question. As I was saying, my sort of interest is, one of my interests in footy is the sort of strategy and that evolution of the game plan. Compared to a lot of other sports, it feels like it evolves sometimes. You hear coaches talk about it evolves sometimes within a season. And it seems to me that it sort of shifted even, quite a lot in the last 2 or 3 years from, say, 23 of that high transition game that Collingwood were playing. The way Collingwood are playing now, to me, looks a little bit different to what won them a flag just 2 years ago. If you were to, in a sort of nutshell, in simple terms, I guess, how would you describe where the game is at right now in terms of method and game plan? And sort of a connected question, how would you describe the core method and game plan that Goody's trying to implement at the D's?
First of all, what I will say about Goody is great courage to change the game style after 5 rounds. What were we, 0-5? I saw a massive change in that Brisbane game, and a lot of it was to do with the defensive structure. You see in my last video that I spoke about Collingwood, I saw that early in the year, but it's like a V structure. So it's about creating uncertainty on the depth perception. So what a lot of teams like to do is they like to set up similar to soccer where they go 3-3-3 or 3-4-3, but they're all in a line. And teams these days are so good at kicking, they'll just dissect you. But what the V shape, I've just called it the V shape. I've made that up, but that's what it looks like.
You should make it the W shape.
Yeah, it could be the Jeff White shape. Yeah, have a bit of trademark add to it. But the V shape is basically you look right and you see players on a 45 or opposition. Then you look left and you see opposition on a 45. So you feel like you can't go that next, kick, whether it's 20, 30 or 40 metres. And then you've got 10 seconds and you just bomb it down the line. So really quickly to set up. Melbourne's doing that. Melbourne's adapted that. So really massive courage from Goody to actually implement that.
Adapted from the Pies were doing it, or?
Yeah, they possibly could have. But I noticed it a lot watching live against Brisbane. That's how the Pies beat Brisbane, was this V-shaped defensive structure. Then lo and behold, they started doing it at the start of the game. It didn't really work, but in the second half, they certainly put it in place and they would have beat Brisbane. And then the other part that so going back, a lot of teams are focused on kicking. Kicking's huge. Kicking's come into play because of the man on the mark. You stand on the mark. Back in my days, you have the guy on the mark would be going, going all over the place. So it'd become more of a handball game. Because you go at the defender, you go at the man on the mark, have a hand pass. But now when they stand, there's no point in actually giving a little, 2-on-1. You just use your footwork. You
can run out and just get the kick.
Yeah, you get more distance by kicking it. Makes sense, right? So, and the other courage part, so that's what teams are doing, more focused on kicking. And then the other second part of Goody's structure that he's changed is lowering his eyes forward to centre. So you've noticed the game against Essendon, which I did a video on at the gather round, they forward to centre just bombed it inside forward 50. And they wonder why they had so many inside forward 50s, but they got belted. It's because they weren't lowering their eyes and there were so many opportunities to hit players in and around that 50 to 40 metres and off the line as well. So off the line is, when you play against someone like Brisbane, off the line is where the ball is in line with the goals. And what Brisbane like to do is, especially Harris, is stand in line. So if you kick it towards the goals, 9 times out of 10, it's going to mark it. Off the line is actually kicking it to the left or right of that line, kicking off the line. So that's why you mentioned before, whether it's kicking to the fat side or kicking in the pocket. Well, there was one play where we kicked it to Melsham, kicked the goal from the pocket against the Gabba. That's off the line stuff. That's not allowing those defenders to come off.
And And in terms of sort of getting a handle on like how well, for instance, for Melbourne, things are working, what sort of metrics or data point stats would you look at, or would you think the most useful to track whether the game plan's being executed successfully?
Scoreboard. No. Look, I like to look at ball movement, particularly off the halfback line. Don't know whether that's a stat. Could be rebound off D50 you could look at. That, and also clearances, whether it's centre bounce or stoppages around the ground. So they're the sort of things I like to look at with Melbourne. And, and one of the big, you mentioned it before where you said, the first 10 minutes I felt like this week. It's interesting you say that, because I really look at the first 10 minutes of a game. And one of the big or it's not really it is a stat, but I don't look at it. I just look at it visually, is how clean the side is. The side that's clean below their knees in the first 10 minutes goes a long way to winning the game. And so on the weekend, it was wet, obviously. Freo were unreal below their knees. They were so clean. I thought, here we go. I reckon they're going to win this. And look, I'm not saying that that's, I try to predict another game just recently. It didn't go that way, but it was pretty close. Below your knees is really, really critical area too. And that's what
does that speak to being mentally ready, you think, or like is that like that sort of that idea that they've come to play or they're switched on, or
Yeah, and I think it also it helps with players around too. So you think about it, if you're clean below your knees, because it's so quick the game these days. You think of 𝗍𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁 there, bang, gives it one touch to 𝗚 coming off, and away you go. If 𝗍𝗁 fumbles, there's that one little bit. And you would have noticed that we were a bit fumbly early in the year.
Yeah. Also at the beginning of this game just gone too.
Yeah. If you fumble, you actually miss that opportunity to give the hands off. Or, have that connection. I don't like if you get it, sometimes in congestion, yes, you've got to bomb it. That's when you're facing your goals. I don't like it when you're going away from your goals, you get it off the ground and then you bomb it over your shoulder. I like for those players to use their hands. So in that situation, if you're clean going away for your goals, and then what happens if you miss that opportunity, it sort of creeps in a little bit, whereas that player who's then going to receive might be a bit hesitant. So it sort of creeps in a little bit. But if you're clean, you just keep doing it. So it creates that infection, I reckon.
Yeah. It's interesting where they're bombing it in. Like, we've got the Bulls playing that old method, which was all about getting at territory and deep first. And Oliver did it on the weekend at the end when he could have given a give at near the end of the game. The handball was the thing to do, but instead he just put it on the boot and sort of fed a turnover and turnover mark inside 50. Last one from me, Andy, and really this is just at a sort of something, one of my favourite players, so back to your career. I think right up there in my top 10 of all-time favourite D's players is the Wiz, Jeff Farmer. One, I guess, what's your sort of experience? I know it was 4 years you played with the Wiz. And, a little bit about him. I just loved him so much. But also how he compares to 𝗍𝗁 in terms of that small forward role and, I guess not so much where 𝗍𝗁, is compared to the Wiz, but do you see similarities in the way they go about their footy?
Yeah, I see a lot of similarities. I think I see more similarities in Flash with 𝗍𝗁.
With 𝗍𝗁 and Flash, that sort of pressure, forward half pressure. Yep. And
the strength of Wiz was his ability to mark overhead. Like 𝗍𝗁 can do that, but sometimes it's about, he might jump on Petty's head to get it. But Wiz one-on-one was just a phenomenal how he could hold his body position. You kick it long on his head, leave him one out, and he would take the mark, 9 times out of 10. And then Wizard was so good on both, like so is 𝗍𝗁, both feet, but his ability to, and they're both, I think those three are just super talents. It was great to play with Flash, but Wizard was, he was phenomenal in that. And, you could have, that's one of the things that Goody should have done yesterday is if he was getting Windhager tagged, he should have left 𝗍𝗁 in the goal square, one-on-one.
One out.
Good luck trying to chase that. But that's what we could do with the Wiz. So the funny story with Wiz, and I've told this story quite a few times. So 2000, if the listeners have heard this story, I'm sorry to repeating myself, but
there's always new
it was,
listeners.
it was 2000 when he kicked 8 in the second half.
Yep.
Or
Nine in the second half. 9-1.
9-1.
It was my greatest ever day. That was amazing. Top of the pond for that second half. Almost got dragged. Almost got taken off. Never put back on, didn't he?
He did get dragged. It was so half time. So 33-34. We share a locker together, and walked in at half time, and I go over to, just to G him up. We were living together, so it was Nita, Wiz, and myself. We were living together in 2000. And he said, "Beat, leave me alone." And so that was the halftime sort of spray I got from Wiz. And then he went on and kicked 9-1. So Nita and I went home. We're just sitting around the couch. It's the funniest thing ever. Walked in, put his bag on the table, put his arms up like he'd normally done when he'd celebrate a goal. It didn't, and then all he said was, "You guys are cooking me dinner tonight because I kicked 9 and won the game for you." That was the Wiz.
My very short version of the story in that match was I was top of the Ponsford and they still had the wooden chairs, and I had a bloke behind me with his maybe 12-year-old son who for the first 3/4 of the game, the first half, just was a vitriol. So it was back in the day when people get away with this at the footy, was just non-stop racial abuse. It was just disgusting, absolutely infuriating. And as Wiz, he didn't do anything in the first half, but as the goal started clocking up, I was able to get a bit more vocal with him behind. And by the end of it, he left with about 10 minutes to go. He's left his son there because every time Wiz went near the ball, I was just screaming. And there we go. It was just a phenomenal day at the footy.
Collingwood supporters, always classy. Well, let's talk about the centre bounce. There seems to be a growing inconsistency, and it feels like we're seeing more and more umpires struggle with it, just struggle with the mechanics of it. We see more skewed bounces, more recalls, some that aren't even called back at all. And Max, recently I heard him say on radio that he likes the unpredictability and thinks that the skewed one shouldn't even be recalled because it's just part of the unpredictability of the game. Where do you sit? Keep the bounce or throw it up?
No, keep the bounce, and I like what he said, what Gorney said, because it saw De Koning say the same thing. He had an SEN interview a couple of weeks ago. They asked him the same question about the bounce, unpredictability of it, and that's part of the art of rucking. Back when we were rucking, when they didn't recall it, you had to brace yourself. You had to try and put your knee up, try and protect yourself, but you would use that as a bit of a leverage too, because you'd go early, jump into them and let their momentum bring you back to the ball if it was bouncing on your head. So there's a lot of strategy involved in that. Then if it bounced on their head, you ran 1,000 miles an hour and put your knee straight through their chest or throat, what I used to try and do. So there's the unpredictability of it. I like it. I like the bounce. I think it's it's pretty cool. Around the ground, throwing up, it's all good. But keep the bounce because the unpredictability of it.
All right, boundary throw-ins. A lot of us have noticed they're falling short a lot more often, I feel, this year. Have you picked up on that too? And is this an issue with the umpire's technique or boundary umpires needing to get more distance in their throws, or do the rucks now need to adapt and set up closer to compensate?
Well, I think the rucks need to have a look at the umpires at the start of the game because they practice. That's what I used to do. Yep. I used to walk up the centre half or wherever we were inside 50 and then go, right, okay, number 28's not throwing at that, not bouncing out high. I know that. Number 13 is bouncing it really high and he's throwing it really long. I think what the boundary umpires are trying to do these days is trying to throw it too high instead of you don't really need to throw it too high. They're trying to get so much purchase on it. You just need to throw it at a good height but get a bit of distance back. So I think they're too focused on trying to get it too high, and I think that's why it's falling short. But from a ruck's point of view, do your homework. Also understand that some boundary umpires are going to have a stronger arm than others. So do your homework, get early. Work out that number umpire. They all have the numbers on them. Work out which number is the weak one and which one's the stronger one. And then you can get an advantage on your opponent instantly. Because if you win a couple of early hit outs and a couple of clearances, they get it. They get the message from the coach, the assistant coaches, the players start getting into them. So you can get a little bit of a leg up.
think I know what your answer to this next one's going to be. As a ruckman, I wanted to get your thoughts on the insufficient intent rule. Seems to be inconsistently applied. Sometimes players are punished harshly and other times they're let off. And as a ruckman, I imagine you'd hate to see the boundary throw-in scrapped altogether, but do you think there's any merit in a last touch rule that might bring more clarity and consistency, or would it just fundamentally change the game too much?
Yeah, I think common sense needs to come into play. I think there was one on the weekend, the Freo one. It was just in congestion. It bounced straight and then bounced directly left. You can't predict that and called it, deliberate. I think a little bit of common sense. I commentate on ABC Grandstand with Michael Price. We have to go over there, and when there's a deliberate, we have to go over there and physically turn the air button off because he goes nuts about it. He's that. And I agree with him. Have common sense, or just go last touch. They do it at junior level
and AFLW, obviously in between.
Yeah. So, but I would hate to see
as a ruckman,
to go to that way. I think what they need to look at is just more common sense. I mean, was it Howe was running full pelt and it come off his toe, and he's trying to combat against his direct opponent, and it accidentally comes off his toe, and they call it. Was that against Hawthorn last week? Call it deliberate. I'm like, common sense, So I think they need to bring that in.
The next question I was going to ask you was about the greatest ruckman of the modern era, but I think you've categorically answered that one. I was going to give you the Dean Cox and Max Gawn. You played.
Or Jeff White.
Well, I had in my notes, take yourself out of the running.
I'm actually glad I played. I remember interviewing Gawn on radio probably a couple of years ago, and he said, got him on, which was really good. This is the only time I've really interviewed him, and he was being interviewed by one of the other guys, and he said, is Whitey up there? I really want to thank him because it was Mark Jamar. I taught Mark Jamar. Mark Jamar taught him. But it all stems from Jim Steins.
Yeah.
So Jim Steins passed on to me what I, passed on to Mark Jamar and then on to Gawn. So I played a little bit of a part. But, Dean Cox was certainly very difficult to play against. He was so mobile. Such a great midfield. You think about Kerr, Cousins, Judd. Yeah. Pretty superior. But the thing I've loved about Gawny, I remember early in his career he was good at ruck taps, but his contested marking wasn't that good. And then all of a sudden flicked the switch. It's like someone got in his ear and said, you have to look how tall you are. You got to improve your contested marking. So he's really – and one of the things I noticed that he's working on this year is his 1%ers. You might have seen yesterday when he played, he went for about 3 or 4 smothers. So all of a sudden he's adding that to his game, which is really powerful. So, for mine is, not being biased as a Melbourne person, but I see it. I've played against Cox. I obviously didn't play against Gawny, but I see it, and, he's a standout.
And how long do you reckon he could play on for realistically?
Well, I said he should sign for 10 years. But and Cozzy for 20. That'll be handy.
Take for 20.
I think he signed for another 2 years. So, look, it's all about his body, really. I heard an interview recently. He loves running, so
he does.
I think you get to the stage where I think it'll be mind for him. I don't think it'll be body per se, even though he plays a really hard position in the ruck. A lot of body contact. Yeah, so hopefully he's got another 2. Definitely got another 2, but hopefully one more after that. Hopefully,
if he could kick
one more Australian this year, that's for sure, Andy.
If he
on the way he's going,
If he could kick straight, you could whack him in the forward line for a couple of years.
And right to left.
And finally, and this isn't putting you on the spot, just on your son Kalani, who's part of the Suns Academy, he's been selected in the Ally squad for this year's Marsh Under-18s National Championship, and it's a huge achievement. And obviously, you must be incredibly proud. And obviously, not putting on your spot about his future or draft intentions. How's he been tracking this year, and how's he enjoying the ride as he heads towards the draft?
Yeah, it's an exciting time. He played Adelaide yesterday. Was a bit down on form. He's been really good. He's He's had a super year already. He was a bit frustrated from yesterday's game. It's the side was put together on Friday.
Yeah.
So really hard to adapt. He played forward, played ruck. But before that, he's been playing really, really well. I think your Demonland people might have posted my Instagram little flash highlight of him.
Everything you put on about him gets put up there.
he's discussed more than you, Jeff.
Yeah. No, he's going really well. He's working really, really hard. He's really focused on, and I mean he's 200 centimeters. He can jump higher than me. Very athletic, good below his knees. He's got all the talents, but he's so raw. He's so, he just evolves. Tall guys always evolve. He's just trying to work on his consistency at the moment. He was good work rate yesterday, but didn't get a lot of possessions. So he's just it's all part of the growth. When I was 17, 18 coming through my draft year, very inconsistent. Good games, poor games. It's about evolving, and he's really enjoying the experience. He's loving, and it's no pressure. He doesn't put any pressure on himself, knowing that he's my son.
Yeah.
He loves. He's just continuing to work on his craft, and he's really working on that. He's working hard on trying to eliminate the external pressures and stuff like that. A big decision for him.
Yeah.
And I must say that Melbourne Footy Club has been just for the last 2 years in particular, have been just outstanding touch points. It's in a great program at the Suns, so certainly a tough decision for him. But I can't question, from a family's perspective, we can't thank the Footy Club enough for the way they've been able to have the touch points. So credit to them. So, and that weighs heavily in, I think, with him. He's, at the end of the day, it's his decision, and we respect any decision he makes. But we just want him to enjoy his footy. We have the 3 H's this year, which is healthy, hungry, and happy.
Yeah.
And just focus on that. And he's going to have poor games like he did yesterday, but his previous 3 games in the Coates League, he just did really, really well. Played in the wet, played in the heat, and did really, really well. So it's all a part of the journey, all a part of the learning and growth that he's going to go through. And we're really excited as a family.
And just a follow-up question, like a lot of sort of athletes, I guess, who have played at the elite level and then have kids coming through, and that some have sort of negative or not a constructive relationship around that coaching stuff, particularly if they're playing a similar position like you and 𝗟𝗀𝗀. Like, how would you characterise that sort of relationship from a mentoring and coaching perspective, particularly given all your work on, that we've been discussing for the YouTube stuff and the ruck work analysis? And what does that look like in terms of your relationship with 𝗟𝗀𝗀?
Yeah, it's a good point you raise. Look, it's I've always said, even when he started playing footy as 8, 9-year-old, I've lived my dream. This is your footpath. This is what you've got to aspire to. And look, it really shits me when all 3 of them are kicking the footy in the house. But I do get upset. But
I hope they're accurate.
But in saying that, I look at it and go, well, that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
You've got to have a footy in your hand. You've got to want it. You've got to want that instinctive flavour. You've got to want to do that. And, 𝗟𝗀𝗀 come home from training tonight and he's kicking the footy just to himself in the house. But I look at it and go, he wants it. Sometimes 11 o'clock at night I can hear him kicking the footy in his bedroom. You can't push that. They've got to do that. It's like if you want to be a good basketball player, you've got to shoot in the rain. You've got to want to go and shoot by yourself and have that drive for it. And, my boys have always had that, but I've never forced that on them. At one stage, 𝗟𝗀𝗀 wanted to play basketball. Yeah, buddy, go for it. And he's a good basketball player. But I didn't force that. I guided them. So as a father, yes, of course, you want them to be happy. You want them to enjoy it. You want them to, experience all those angles of sport. But also, too, you want to sort of guide them in some way and them have fun. And that's why we put the happy as the 3 H's this year for 𝗟𝗀𝗀. It's just to enjoy his footy. Yes, he was down about yesterday, but hey, we go again. We've got this week, go again and work on your craft, and this is what we need to focus on. So get back to working out what he needs to work on.
Well, Jeff, before we let you go, is there anything you'd like to plug, your websites, your socials, and where people can find and follow First Use?
Well, yeah, it's firstuse.com.au. But first of all, I want to say thanks to you guys.
Oh, thank you.
George, Andy, and Bin Man. Thanks for having me on. I now and then look at the Demonland, the website, and go through the chats. I really want to just give a shout out to the Demon fans. They made some lovely comments. I think I mentioned that to you.
Yeah, you did.
Andy,
I told everyone on that thread.
Yeah, I just want a special shout out. That was really it meant a lot. I'm going to obviously do more videos on the Ds in the future if I see something that I need to pinpoint and work out. But I really appreciate the feedback and and I really thanks for having me on tonight. Really appreciate it. Go the Ds. Still, love the Ds, and hopefully, there's more enjoyment to come, and good luck, and hopefully the Ds can. I have a sneaky feeling we can win on Queen's birthday.
It'd be great.
I really do. It's in the past during my time, it was we were favourites, we lost. Didn't matter where we were on the ladder. It's like the Adelaide versus Port Adelaide. It doesn't matter where you're on the ladder. But I always felt that when they were favourites, we won. When we were favourites, they won. So we certainly won't go in this game favourites. So that's what I'm looking at. And I think we'll bounce back and get Jack Viney in there on King's birthday Monday. You got Neil Danaher, freeze the G. A lot of emotion involved in that. I think we're a big chance.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Jeff,
I totally agree.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights, both about the modern game and the incredible work you're doing with First Use. It's clear how passionate you are about developing the next generation. It's been fascinating hearing your perspective, and we wish you all the best with continued success with First Use, and of course, best of luck to Kalani as he continues his journey towards the draft, and wherever he ends up, he'll no doubt make you and hopefully us very proud. So thanks again, mate. It's been a pleasure.
No worries. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. And that's the longest podcast I think I've ever been involved in. So
yeah, and we're still halfway through.
We haven't even started out.
All right. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of the night.
Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Well, that was Jeff White. Great having him on tonight. Big man, we'll get straight in. I'm not going to go through all of our housekeeping stuff. It's suffice to say that the best way to support the podcast is by leaving us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on our social medias. Generally find us by searching Demonland. If you want to join the conversation with fellow D's fans, heading over to our forum, demonland.com, and over there you can watch many videos that Jeff White posts. If you're listening live, head on over to demonland.com/podcast to join the chat room. We won't be taking any calls tonight as we're already behind schedule. But sorry, B-Man, before you get into your stats files, I'll just go through our match overview. And Melbourne's momentum came to a screeching halt in the red centre as they were brought undone by a ruthless St Kilda outfit and our own wayward kicking, falling by 28 points in a game that may come to haunt us at the end of the season. And entering round 12, having won 5 of our last 6, the Demons were brimming with confidence and finals aspirations. But despite winning the inside 50 count by a staggering 17 and dominating patches of general play, we just failed to lead at any break and ultimately succumbed to a more punishing and accurate Saints. A 6-goal St Kilda avalanche in the first quarter, followed by Melbourne's appalling 0-8 return in the final term, sealed our fate. And Melbourne started brightly, controlling early possession, but that dominance failed to translate to the scoreboard with only 1 goal from our first 10 minutes. The turning point came when a 𝗍cie Pickett snap that looked destined for a goal was intercepted on the goal line by Brad Hill. The Saints countered immediately, triggering a 14-minute blitz that delivered 6 unanswered goals and left the D's shell-shocked. That lapse proved terminal. The Demons never recovered from that early onslaught, trailing 24 points at quarter time. Melbourne steadied in the second term with Christian Petrarca trying to will his side back into the contest. His clearance work alongside Max Gorm was vital as the D's surged with 4 second-quarter goals. But once again, inaccuracy plagued their efforts. Shots went begging from Cade Chandler, Max Gorn and Xavier Lindsay, among others. The third quarter was a frustrating grind. Melbourne had their chances, including a set-shot goal to Harry Petty that trimmed the margin to just 2 kicks, but critical misses to Daniel Turner and Jake Melksham early in the last broke their rhythm and spirit. And from there, the D's unravelled, registering 9 consecutive behinds to finish the game and gifting the Saints the chance to punish them on the rebound, which they often did. The final tally of 7 goals, 21 behinds marked the second time in 3 seasons that the Demons recorded a near identical 1-3 goal to behind ratio at Traeger Park. The location, once symbolically tied to the club's Indigenous connection and community outreach, is fast becoming a house of horrors. After a 92-point loss to Fremantle at the same ground in 2024, this performance raised renewed questions about whether the club's off-field commitments are coming to the cost of on-field returns. Simon Goodwin will also be left to ponder his side's inability to respond to opposition momentum. For the second time this season, the D's were overrun in a key stretch of play and had no effective circuit breaker. Max Gawn was typically influential, dominating the ruck with physicality and leadership, but even the captain was among the culprits in front of goal with a costly miss. Christian Petrarca again proved Melbourne's most dynamic midfield forward link, kicking 2 goals and working tirelessly all game. Jake 𝗟𝗯𝗀 and Judd McVie provided some much-needed rebound, with McVie in particular showing poise under pressure. And Stephen Mail battled hard against Kilda, but was well beaten early before regaining some ascendancy. Aidan Johnson, the mature-age mid-recruit, faces a likely suspension after a high hit on 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝗁𝗀 that forced the Saint off for a HIA, though he later returned and he actually has got 2 weeks. So there you go. 𝗍𝗫 Pickett, coming off a strong form in recent weeks, was blanketed by Marcus Windhager in a disciplined tag that left 𝗍𝗫 with just 12 disposals and 0 scoreboard impact. He was visibly frustrated, giving away a free kick for retaliation in the first half. Is the goal-kicking problem now systemic? With multiple close-range misses and no reliable set-shot routine evident, calls are growing louder for a dedicated goal-kicking coaching intervention. Bring on Jeff White, I say. Can the team stop momentum shifts? The 6-goal burst from the Saints mirrors other games where Melbourne has allowed opposition's runs to go unchecked. Should Alice Springs remain a home fixture? The combination of sparse support, difficult conditions and a poor record, now 3 losses from 4 matches at the venue, cast doubts on the club's commitment to continue playing critical games away from the G. Melbourne's final hopes will remain mathematically intact, but the loss was a clear step backwards. Now sitting at 5-7 and outside the 8, the Demons have little room for error in the back half of the season. Simon Goodwin has plenty to consider as they prepare for a pivotal King's birthday clash against the old enemy, the Magpies. Now, Big Man, now it's your turn. Take it away with your stats.
Before I do, you're right. I mean, that's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? There's a pivotal or a turning point in when they say that. But that was a huge turning point when 𝗍𝗫 didn't take the time. It wasn't just, they explained it well on the coverage. It wasn't that he rushed the shot, that he didn't take the full 30 seconds. Yeah. And so when it was turned over, you could see it was actually a really good way to understand how important structure is, because we were completely at a loss with when they moved that ball quick. And as you said, they kicked the next 6 goals. It was really a poor bit of play by 𝗍𝗫. And a mate of mine pointed out he did the same thing last week, but because we won, no one really noticed. But it was a bit, it wasn't a great bit of work by 𝗍𝗫. But ironically or interestingly, in the player rating, which again measures impact and score, it's funny you should mention had no scoreboard impact, because the player rating system's all about scoreboard impact and measuring each intervention in the game's influence on either costing us a score or creating a score. 𝗍𝗫 was our second highest rated player in the game, 13.5, which really surprised me. He had 2 big quarters, the second quarter and the third quarter, in which he had 5 player rating points in each of them. Our highest rated player on the ground was Stephen May, who his opening quarter was 6, which was interesting because he sort of had a struggle against, was it Kilda? Is that his name? Kilda, George?
Yeah, Kilda.
He's a big lump of a lad, isn't he?
And they were using him. He was originally named in the back line, but obviously I'll talk about it later about our selections, but there wasn't a need, so they put him down the forward line.
Yeah, and ex-Crow didn't realise that. So, yeah, he had a good first 10, 15 minutes, but Steve May had a great, he was really terrific, and I thought our best player. And so 18.2 is his match rating. 𝗍𝗫, quite a drop down to 13.5, and then track was our third highest rated player. This young fellow keeps impressing. Harvey Langford was our fourth rated player. In what I thought was a really positive sign, that was he, as we've talked about, he seems to move slow, but he thinks quick, and I think that's he's got such high footy IQ. 𝗟𝗶𝘀𝘁𝗁, his best game, I don't know what you thought, George, but his best game since he's been back in the ones, or back from injury, I should say, and he was our fifth highest rated player. But it sort of goes to how, our performance, I guess, overall is that he was our fifth highest rated player, and he only had a player, well, not only, his player rating was 10.3, which is a pretty solid game, but not for a fifth rated player. And Daniel Turner had another solid game. It was interesting. They threw him up forward. He was our sixth highest rated player. At the other end of the table, Aiden Johnson, in addition to getting 2 weeks, he was our lowest rated player, negative 2.5. And I have to say there was sort of very little of the positives of last week, because he was our lowest rated player last week, or second lowest rated player last week, in the sense that he wasn't doing that bullocking work up forward that he did the previous week that created chances. Not a great game from AJ, and he's out for 2 weeks. And he might look back on this game as certainly something he's going to have to fight back from. That's for sure. Just with stats, for me, I think there's not much point going into them today. It's a bit similar to the Essendon game. I wrote on Demonland before the round, so this is not being smart after the fact, that against Brisbane, I wrote a post about why I thought, against the Swans, why I thought were really good value. Swans were favourite coming to that game. I wrote a post arguing why we should be favourites, and it represents good value to back us. I wrote an opposite post this week, arguing that I thought we were $1.45 to start that match. Why that we were way too short. That the value bet, if you wanted to bet on the game, was the Saints, and that it was a very definition game of a danger game. And I noted a number of 6 reasons in total for my rationale for that, including the sort of playing in the Alice, travelling, those sorts of things. But I noted this as well as one of those reasons. I wonder if our high performance program is geared towards being one of the reasons for being concerned about this game. I wonder if our high performance program is geared towards being in optimal shape on King's birthday at the potential expense of this game, i.e. a bigger block of training into this game, then taking advantage of the 8-day break to taper into the Pies game. Bring Back Power, a Demonland poster, made a comment to that, which was a good comment, that he hopes I'm wrong, because he'd rather we prioritise the Saints game, that we have a better chance of winning for risk of, rather than risking losing against the Pies, to which I responded that I definitely see that logic. Okay, it's a strong argument, but I just wonder, given how poorly we've played in the Queen's birthday game in the last few years, ironically, I think in large part because, in my opinion, we've been loading around this point of the season. If the idea might be cherry ripe for the King's birthday game, and I'm absolutely convinced, totally convinced that that proved to be the case, that we took a calculated risk. Did a big block of training ahead of this game with the goal of optimising our condition for the Pies game, and our performance suffered as a result. So I in that context, I don't see much value in any of the stats, because simply, if you're not at optimal readiness condition-wise to play a game of footy, all of the stats are of no sort of import, really. Just the one stat. So the most evident way of measuring effort is, number one is pressure, team pressure, and number two is contested possessions. I heard what's his name, McCarthy, on SEN this week in the slot he does with Jared Waitley talk about the reason coaches love contested possession is it's the best way of defining desire in the game. And he said all coaches love contested possessions. There's a sort of widespread misunderstanding about what they are. They're not disposals. They're different to disposals. And he said coaches love it because contested possession is, they look at it all through the game and they track it very closely during the game because, it speaks to the player's individual desire and collectively. Our team pressure was absolutely appalling in this game. game. 132 was our last quarter. It was apparently, according to Fox coverage, the lowest single quarter in Goody's tenure at coach. So this is his 9th season. Yeah, it's a 9th season. So in 8.5 seasons, he's not in a team he's coached had a quarter where we've had a lower pressure. It was 132 to 161 in that last quarter, and no one's telling me that's fatigue, pure and simple. I'm not giving them an out for this. We should have won the game. The reason we didn't was because of our, partly. I think this is overdone a bit. Our expected score was only 1.5 points more than theirs. So of course, if we kicked straight, we could have won, but no guarantee. But that was a huge factor. I've argued this for forever and a day that those two are interconnected. Our first quarter, and this is how it looked, 159 was our first quarter to 160. Our only decent differential quarter was our second highest, was the second quarter, and that's where we got back into the game to a degree. We just did not take our chances, and that's where it's not so much the inaccuracy, it's just not taking your chances when you've got your opportunities. We kicked 4 goals, 7 in that second quarter. It is no coincidence whatsoever that quarter, our best quarter, coincided with our highest pressure differential. We were plus 22 for pressure in that quarter. They only could manage 152. So really, we should have, should have been enough. We should have really put our foot down in that quarter, put our foot on the throat in that quarter. Even with the fact that I think we were loading, we should have won this. So 100% want to be clear. I'm not giving the team an out. Good teams manage this. I think our poor kicking exacerbated by fatigue. So if just like golf, if you've got a terrible golf swing and you are really tired, your golf swing's gonna be worse. It was also the average. I think they said on the Fox coverage as well is that for 162 was our total pressure average pressure rating for the game, which is the 5th lowest ever for a Goodwin coached team. So it really points to where we're at in terms of our numbers. Our pressure was not AFL ready. If you don't do pressure, it's not just the contest. It's not just the tackling. It's not the intensity of the players. It's all of that thing that we didn't do. So the other really key number that is highlighting our lack of running power, you only had to look at Langdon to see that, by the way, is the incredible number of uncontested possessions they had. They had, They had almost 100 more disposals than us, 299 to 390, 260 kicks. They were just chipping it around. That's what I expected if we were running on top of the ground we would do to them. So, they knew, you could tell, like the opposition knew what was happening. 249 uncontested possessions to 177. It was as clear as day right from the beginning of that match. I thought we were in trouble and that I was correct, I believe I was correct around where we were at in terms of that loading. 249 uncontested possessions to 177. Lion knew where we were at in terms of our running power and looked to exploit it absolutely the entire game. And the fatigue means that pressure is also, as I've talked about, corralling, but running, that frontal pressure is running up and stopping them being able to have all of those uncontested marks and uncontested possessions. We just didn't have the run in the legs. Of course, there's an aspect of which there's mental application. I think it's reasonable to question our resilience as a footy club. I'd be asking some questions around, well, haven't we got leading teams? Aren't leading teams supposed to be involved in the club? In which case, where's their thinking about being able to win games? One of the things I've been super impressed with the Pies, Jeff White mentioned that Freo game. They rested 5 of their players. They were coming off a 5-day break. Everything pointed to them to being fatigue was a massive issue, and it was. But they're elite ball users. Side bottom and Pendle. Side bottom, I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure he played the. They stood up and their system stood up, and they're good players who have got good technique, kick clutch goals, and we just didn't do that on the weekend. So by no means am I giving the team an out, but having said that, I have no doubt in my mind that that's where we're at, and I fully expect a massive turnaround. So when we're suddenly come next week, King's birthday, we're running on top of the ground and applying 200 elite points of pressure per quarter, people will go, well, what happened? What happened last week? And the answer is that we're loading into it to taper into the Pies game is my theory. So I think, there's not much value going into the numbers. If you apply that level of pressure, you're not going to win games of AFL footy. And we still could have got away with a win if we'd balanced up and taken our chances. There was some horrible kicking. It's interesting what Jeff White was saying about the yellow line, because that's Choco's invention. I'm sure that's his thing. Have you've been to a few trainings? Did you notice the yellow balls there?
Yeah, they certainly had them there at the start of the season, but I haven't been to more recent ones.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see if we are. But I was thinking about it, to what extent is it a bit easy? I'm guilty of this, of saying, oh, well, Choco's the goal kicking coach. Why isn't, our goal kicking's terrible? But I do wonder, there must be a psychological aspect to it, I assume. And so where's our sports psychology? Where's that aspect of the way players are being prepared? Because some of them, what's his name? Lindsay, he's a beautiful kicker of the footy. He's got great technique. And, he had his second shot at goal, which would have been his first goal in AFL. He should have kicked that 9 times out of 10, no pressure, ran inside 50, had a kick under no pressure from 40 metres, 45, should have drilled it. There were some horrible kicks. I don't know what Maxi's doing. I had no confidence that he would get that. Some of it is poor technique, but surely to some degree, I don't know, it's psychological. And in which case, I think it's reasonable to ask questions like, well, what's our... who are we paying at the club to do the psychological aspect of it? There was a big noise made about leading teams and all of that. Well, where's the benefit of it? So I'm not giving the team an out at all by saying loading was I think the biggest factor. But good teams with good mental strength and good solid techniques, they win those sorts of games. I think that's a completely reasonable argument.
The other thing Jeff alluded to, and I think he's more correct about it as well, is practice, practice, practice. And I don't know what other clubs do, but we do not practice goal kicking or set shot kicking.
Yeah, he touched on it, isn't it? Because I hear about that as the tension with the high performance program, the sports science, and the kilometres. They measure the distances they run to the metre, But I think it's a reasonable question to even to factor that in. Well, can't they do some sort of training that factors that in? Because the bottom line is,
it's costing us games. It's costing us finals.
How many games? Realistically, Andy George, in the last say since 23-24 in this season, how many games do you think we should have won if not for woeful kicking?
Well, in the 21 to 23 period, we won a lot of games, so we didn't lose that many. But then finals, the 23 finals, arguably can say the Collingwood and Kilda games, had we kicked straighter in both of those, we would have won both. Or
22 as well. There'd be a dozen. Yeah. There'd be a dozen games, including one.
I say it all the time. So you're preaching to the converted. Yeah. And I've always said,
it was a nightmare. It was a different conditions. Can I just go? There were even games. GWS 2 years ago.
There were even GWS 2 that was in the terrible conditions up there. But I used to say it a lot, even when we'd win. I would say this is going to cost us games in the future, and it's costing us games in the future because we never worked on it while we were winning games. During 21 to 23, besides those finals and a couple games, we were kicking terribly in games we were winning, and it was never fixed.
Is there anything more? I honestly, in all seriousness, I watch a fair bit of sport and I love footy. I cannot think of a thing more annoying than watching your team miss gettable shots at goal and then the opposition
over again, and then the opposition go down and kick impossible shots or goals on the run, or
Or there was in this game, I can't remember, it was Fritter who missed a shot and went straight up the other end, and someone kicked a goal from almost the identical distance, gun barrel straight, went straight through the middle. And I thought,
Well, we lost the game in round one with Max Gawn missing a goal, and their ruckman goes down the other end a bit later and kicks the same goal.
And Max, he needs, I don't think he needs a kicking coach. He needs a psychologist because he does not have the same, he seems like his body language does not give off the energy of a player who is going to kick the goal. And I have to say the same thing about Track. Track is so similar with that effort that he tried to banana from, like, why didn't he just square up and kick the goal? What was that all about? It's like, very, very frustrating.
Mind you, I've just had a look at training photos I've gone through the last couple of sessions, and it appears that during the in-field stuff, the regular drills, they're not using that ball, and I'm not sure whether they were previously using those lined balls in those parts of training. There's a couple of ones where you see a player sort of just holding one of those yellow lined or the red line, depending on the colour of the footy, but appears that they're maybe having set shots for goal because they're around those, George, you might know them, those blue men-shaped metal things. So they're always around when I see in a photo. But most of the photos, and they're holding a ball and it's in general play, it's not the non-lined ball. So there you go. That's
actually, now, Andy, I'm just looking at a photo. I've just sort of here. I think I've found the problem. There are plenty of balls with the line on. The problem is the line's going around the football the other way, not along the seam. Yeah. So maybe they've got a defective batch of. Well,
maybe it's just changed. Because I've just gone to a training and they've got all of them, all the shots are with it. This was April 29th. So we've got anything since then, April 29th, it hasn't had those. But almost every ball in this April 29th training gallery has the line. Yeah, the plot thickens. Maybe we've ditched it in the last few weeks.
Last few years.
No, the last few weeks. But I don't know. It wasn't. You know what? It wasn't helping us before then.
Well, remember as I said last week, the first 6 or 7 rounds of 2023, we were so far number one for kicking accuracy. It was unbelievable, particularly seeing it's not that many different players playing now, like up forward. So maybe, who knows? Maybe we can get on a run and improve it. But it's so frustrating.
Well, we've sort of talked about this. So I'll read the. I'll go. We were going to talk about the kicking, not the first thing, but I'll read them out because we've already talked about it. Sam6172 says, incredibly frustrating to still be saying bad kicking is bad football. Some of those set shots were gettable by my son's year 10 team. The hooks from directly in front suggest flawed technique. Choco is taking the at this point. Dark Horse 72 says, do they actually practice goal kicking and real simulations of training? Surely it's a flashing red indicator that this issue isn't fixed. Start deducting match payments for easy missed goals. It would save a fortune. Wells 11 says, we just have so many terrible set shots now. Watching Gawn, AJ, Fritsch, Track, 𝗍𝗲 or Sharp shoot is a lottery. Is it mental, technical? It's costing us games with 2-goal turnarounds every week. Spirit and Norm Smith says 7 goals, 21 behinds. At least 6 to 7 were easy and within 30 metres. 1-12 after half-time. Petty kicked our only goal in that time. Can you believe that? And Billy Bean says, is there a football equivalent of a broomstick putter or claw grip that can cure the goal kicking yips? Bimanda, we're in crisis mode.
Well, it's funny that reference to golf because I love watching golf, and one of my favourite commentators who transitioned from playing to commentary is 𝗟𝗍𝗀𝘀𝘁𝗄, who famously, at the height of his career, really, not long after winning a British Open, he completely and utterly got the yips and basically had to retire from golf because he couldn't. But hopefully they don't get to the 𝗟𝗍𝗀𝘀𝘁 stage and we can turn it around because, I've got more hair than you, Andy, and I do not want to get to your state of follicle challenge, being follically challenged.
Mine is just cut very short.
But using the golf analogy, I think it was Gary Player said, the more I practice, the better I get.
The more I practice, the luckier I get.
Yeah, but the same thing. Practice. And I don't know that we're doing enough practice in that area.
And it's interesting what Jeff White was saying. I've heard Buddha Hocking talking about this, is growing up having a footy in your hands all the time, like literally all the time. And
Jeff White just talked about
George,
it.
with your basketball background, the best players, they talk about that. Like you'd never see them without a basketball in their hand. And I wonder whether that's quite the same, or at least for our players. I saw a stat. Willow put a stat up that almost made me cry on Demonland. I think I'm right in saying Tracks had something like 50 kicks inside 50, 2 of which have been marked inside 50. It's like 𝗟𝗏𝘀𝘁's number one, which, as I posted on Demonland, people wonder why 𝗟𝗏𝘀𝘁's in the team. That's why he's in the team. He's our best kick inside 50 or maybe second. And I think it was best because he's second. But
just
Track
doesn't
is
get enough.
2 out of 50.
Just doesn't get enough of the ball. We'll go on to the next one. And mind you, we've cut down there. So thank you to all the listeners who contributed and posted questions. But because we had Jeff White coming on, I've sort of abbreviated. Not only have I cut down the amount of questions we're going to take, but abbreviated some of the questions that people have asked. So if it's not written exactly as you wrote it on the page, I apologise for that. But I knew time was not on our side. But the context of what you were saying is definitely there. Then Demon Cat says, it's time that the club stop playing games in Alice Springs. I love the community work that the club does up there, but we're giving up a competitive advantage not playing at the MCG with 3 of our worst losses in the past 3 years being played at that venue. Outside 50 says, how long are we going to persist with going to the Northern Territory? They all say they love going there, but so what? I like going on holidays too. We need to play home games in front of our home crowd at the G, not some carnival in front of a couple thousand opposition supporters. Doug Remus says, our record at this in Alice Springs now reads 4 wins, 7 losses, and no idea how to play this ground. Time to move on. We win that by 5 goals if we're at the G. And Rostar says, should we continue the Alice experiment? It has halted momentum again. So, George, what are your thoughts on whether the D should continue scheduling home games in the Alice? And look, I don't think we need to disparage Alice Springs or the place. Should we be giving up home games, I guess, is the question.
Alice Springs isn't the problem, as we've seen in this match, and has been the case for the last couple of times we've been up there. Don't forget that the other teams that have beaten us up there don't play in Alice Springs all that often. We play at least there once a year. So if there is some advantage to be gained, we should be doing it. But we've been losing matches because we've been awful when playing up there. So the other difficult thing is there's a financial aspect to it.
Yep.
I'm not quite sure what it is, somewhere between
it's 500 grand, isn't it?
Bucks. Sorry?
It's 500. That was my understanding. It used to be $1 million with the 2 games, and I assume it's somewhere in that vicinity.
Whatever it is, there's a financial advantage to it. But the thing that people always totally miss is that we will not get a game at the MCG in lieu of this. We'll be shunted off to Docklands. Yeah, exactly. So we'd be playing St Kilda, for example, at Docklands in lieu of this game because so there goes the home ground advantage. Alice Springs isn't the problem. We need to sort out all sorts of other things.
And you're across this much better than I am, George, but I think it is easy to discount the money aspect of it. But one of my pet hates, one of the things I've banged on about is our comms, our comms to members and our engagement, and to pay a top shelf comms person and team, costs money. That's where. So it's not just the what you see on the field and all of that stuff. It's a soft cap off the field, and I'm not sure if that administrative stuff's part of this soft cap, but it's of course part of the cost of running a footy club, so obviously they think the numbers stack up in terms of we're getting more money by doing it. I agree. It's not that year that we had the Dead Heart. Remember it was really pumped up as an event. I think we played Adelaide Crows. That's what I would like to see them to do. But make it less feel like an afterthought.
Are we doing anything up there now? We used to see videos of them doing stuff in the community. They'd go up a few days early. I don't believe we're doing any of that now. I don't think.
Well, it's hard to know. That's my point about the fan engagement stuff.
Yeah, but if they were doing something, they would have posted.
Didn't we support a footy ground like an MCG?
Yeah, there was
footy ground up there that was planted out, and
I didn't see
grass, turf, and.
Did they even go to local community things and send a few players?
A little bit, I think, but I only know that because of Demonland.
They used to do a lot more, though, is what I'm saying. So if we're going to go there to do all this community stuff, then, it's about outreach.
And the other weird thing is, why is it not part of Sir Doug Nicholls' rounds?
Yeah,
why isn't it
me as well.
One of those two things, and really make Alice Springs could do with a bit of positive energy poured into it.
Why not do that? Why not play a game? The whole point of Indigenous round, why not play a game up there during that? I know, I think it was one of the Darwin games during Indigenous round.
I don't
Maybe
think
in
it
the
was.
first
Or
one
maybe-
was this, Gold Coast played 2 games up there. So maybe the second one was
I don't
in the
think it-
start. But
don't
if
think it
I don't
was.
know if it was either. Like, why not play a game in Darwin and a game in Alice Springs during Sir
and
Dave
have
Nichols' round?
maybe the footy club has their bye. Melbourne has the bye after that game, and then we get to spend some time in the community and then
You want to give the players
comms
time off.
show us
as
what's
well.
happening up there, and so
But-
I agree with George. I don't think it's
No.
it's so much. It's a beautiful ground.
Yeah.
Looks beautiful. At least it's massive. So.
All right, let's move on. We've only got one more thing. Dr. Gonzo says this game felt like a replay of the worst losses in 22-23, banging it in inside 50 and getting cut up on the rebound. We just can't seem to learn from past mistakes. Rostar says, I think we were out-coached. Goody expected dour defence, but Lion went run and gun. By the time we adjusted, it was too late. We should have overrun them, but couldn't convert. Spirit of Norm Smith adds, we regressed to dump kicks, allowed the Saints to run the corridor. There was no pressure in the last. We played into their hands. Lion clearly had the tactical upper hand. And George, do you agree with the criticism of Goodwin's tactics and game plan execution in the Alice?
It's not just Goodwin. There's a whole team that's meant to be looking at what's happening on the ground. And I'll start with the selection again. We've gone for the same old problem that we talked about with JVR. We put AJ in. Now, he didn't perform all that well, but the thing was he spent half his time on the bench and half the time in the ruck and about 10 minutes actually playing in the full forward line. And guess what? That left Petty as a single tall full forward. And why did Wilkie take all those marks and have all those positions?
We put it down his throat, that's why.
Well, that was part of it, but we put it down his throat because all they had to do was take out Petty out of the contest down there, and they had Webster and Brian or something, if I remember. You've only got to block out one player, and you leave Wilkie all on his own. That's exactly the tactics that we've used for years and years with Lever down the back line. But if you keep selecting one tall in a forward line effectively, or 1.5 talls, that's what happens. And if they continue to do it, it's going to happen again. It doesn't matter how many times, as we've seen in this game, you put it inside 50. If you can't get a contest that will either mark or get it to ground, then the ball goes straight down the other end. And it's exactly what it did. Second one was a major failure. 𝗍𝗲 was tagged. Great, okay. So what do? Nothing. As Jeff White said before, they should have put him in the forward pocket and left him there. Windhager got 28 possessions because he was following 𝗍𝗲 around. Just put him in that forward pocket. He'll do enough damage in the forward line. We'd pray that he would because nobody else could. But that's a simple coaching solution to someone who's got a hard tag like they had on him. That creates the opportunity and the opening in the middle for the others to lift. Wasn't done. Before the game, Goody was interviewed. They expected run off the St Kilda's half-back line. What was done about it in the first quarter? Absolutely nothing. Nasiah, Wangadine, Miller had no on him all day. It was obvious, and even the commentators had picked it up, how loose we were in that first quarter, and we tightened up in the second, which brought us back into the game. Surely you've got runners which go out on the ground, or to go back to Binman's point before, surely you've got leaders on the ground who say we need to tighten this up right now. We can't let them run away and get 6 goals opening on us in the first quarter. It's just ridiculous, the lack of communication from the bench, from the coaching, in the above the ground, or from the leaders on the ground. Simple solutions. Let's stick to it. Can't really say anything else. That was just disappointing all round. We finally saw, the use of the sub was the final nail in the coffin. We put Laurie on the field. I think he only had 20% game time, which means he played about 20 minutes, which means he had 10 minutes off in the last quarter. I don't know that he can go into the forward line when you've already got Fritsch and Melcham and Sharp already playing in there. So what role does he possibly play? He piddles around somewhere on the ground, doesn't do very much, and you've dropped AJ out of the forward line. You're forced to move Turner down to the forward line because you've got no talls again. Great, fantastic. Just really poor coaching all round, really poor communication.
Just on AJ, you mentioned his game time. I was just looking at it then. His game time was just a tick over, let's have a look, what was it? Tick over 50%.
Yeah.
So it was 46%, tick under 50%. He got subbed off, didn't he?
Yeah, got subbed off in the last quarter. So,
yeah,
should be 75% if he was
46
on the ground. But, he spent 25% of the game on the bench.
And I have to say, I read that wrong before. Aidan Johnson was our second last. Cut and paste error. Laurie Bailey was our lowest rated player, negative 0.04. And I want to like Bailey Laurie, but speaking of selections, he had his chances to make an impact and didn't, unfortunately, and made a couple of errors. And he really, I guess it's hard when you're a sub and you get your chance, but, that's, I guess, elite sport, isn't it? You come in, you take your chances and make an impression. He didn't make a massive impression on me, that's for sure. And, I'm coming from a perspective of really wanting him to do well.
All right, let's get into the 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗰𝗀𝗀 game. 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 delivered a dominant 94-point victory over the Sydney Swans at Tramway Oval, overcoming a scrappy start to storm home with a 13-goal unanswered blitz in the final 40 minutes. Despite controlling the contest for much of the game, 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀's early efforts were undermined by unforced errors and congested style of play, more akin to rugby, as Sydney dragged the match into an ugly defensive scrap. At the 25-minute mark of the third quarter, 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 led by just 14 points. What followed, however, was a demolition. The Demons shifted gears and played with polish and purpose, piling on goal after goal and completely overwhelming a fatigued Swan side. The 94-point final margin reflected not only 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀's superiority, but also their ruthlessness once momentum swung their way. A major highlight was the influence of 𝗠𝗲𝗀's VFL-listed players. Riley Baldy, Mitch Hardy and Riley Bonner were consistently effective across four quarters. Paddy Cross nailed 3 goals in the late surge. Noah Uze, rebounding from mid-season draft disappointment, kicked 2. Tyson Srook worked hard without being as dominant as in previous weeks. Deacon Smith continued his leadership role admirably. Among the AFL contingent, 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 had 15 and to Sydney's 11. Several stood out. Jack Billings produced a best-on-ground performance with 32 disposals in a 4-quarter effort. Maybe he'll get a recall. Tom Campbell bossed the ruck with 34 hit-outs, 6 clearances and 2 goals, with Will Verrell offering a solid backup. Matthew Jefferson and Jacob Van Rooyen were potent up forward, combining for 7 goals by three-quarter time, with Jefferson booting his second consecutive bag of 5. Jai Cully, Blake Housen, Ollie Seston, Colton Tolstrup and Tajwa Woden also impressed. Next up, 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 faces a curious fixture against Collingwood on Saturday night at Misson-Witten Oval, a venue better known as Footscray's home ground than a traditional stage for these two clubs. Nevertheless, the challenge looms large and 𝗠𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀's recent form suggests they're building ominously towards the second half of the season. George, anything? Did you watch it? Anything you want to add?
Yeah, watch the whole lot. For the second week in a row, I don't know that you can take a great deal from this. Sydney have won 1 game for the season. They were pretty awful. What was surprising was that for 3 quarters of the game, the difference between the two sides was something like 14 to 21 points for the whole lot, basically. And then we kicked 11 goals, 2 to 2 points in that last quarter. It was just quite incredible. The individual players, I wouldn't take anything from Billings' statistics. So all these kicks are short, slow, backward.
Colour me, what's that saying? Colour me pink or something.
Yeah, it just goes. If you want the game slowed up, he's the man to do it. Jai Cully is.
He was our highest rated player, I think, both in a lot of not just from player.
I can
rating.
imagine lots of statistics. No real effect in the game, even consistently in last quarter runs into an open goal and misses it. So that was Billings, as we know.
He had a pretty good game, George. Come on, No,
well, I thought
he was named by the club as our best player. So
Well, that only means they're going to select him.
Maybe, but
yeah. Jeffo showed a lot in this. He's actually jumping at the ball and contesting, which, but again, it's hard to take anything because the Sydney defence wasn't all that great. Fullerton is He's just not up to the level, I'm afraid. I think he got a couple of really good opportunities this game. He's just too slow, doesn't do much. Tolstrup's becoming a bigger and bigger worry in this game. I think even the commentators at one stage said he's more lair than instead of flair. He really just doesn't get involved enough in the game compared to what he was showing when he was playing at senior level. So JVR did the same as last week. A lot of work up the ground, a lot of contesting stuff. He could have easily, if he was playing closer to goal, because he wasn't for the good part of the game, he would have had a much more opportunity to be kicking goals. But he's looking good. We had Woden and Kynan Brown playing in the midfield, so that gives you an indication. They're not really strong midfielders, but it gives you an idea of the lack of opposition they're up against and doing particularly well. But Cully, I reckon, is going to be in the side pretty soon.
Yeah, just two of those players. I thought JVR's game was good. I'd take your point on Cold. He's just not getting enough of the ball, but in the last 2 weeks, his body language has been better and his sort of application. I gave him a bag in the first week. I really, really like Cully. He's not quick across the ground, but a bit like what I was saying about Langford. He's left footer like Langford. He's got good footy IQ. He makes good decisions, and he's tough. Goes in straight lines. I really like him. Seston was a bit quieter this weekend, but I thought he's not far away either if he can build his tank. But like you, I was really impressed with Jefferson's attack, and a couple of times there's still because it's not instinctive, that second effort. I feel like there's still a half second delay, but he's clearly working on it. That's all you can ask of players. There was a couple where, in fact, he won the ball with the third effort, and I can't remember the exact play, but it ended up sort of getting out of the contest because he was still chasing after it, and we ended up getting a goal from the spillage. But
I think he got 2 goals as a result of tackle free kicks in the.
Well, he did last week. I'm not sure if he did this week. He may well have. I thought he's like, one thing that really noticed about him, and I think you're spot on. There's hardly any space for players to run into, so it's probably an art that's not as important as perhaps it once was. But he times his lead well. He's a natural forward who knows when to go, and took a couple of nice marks out in front of himself and out in front of his eyes. So it actually gave me a lot more confidence because he's clearly working on that second effort and the intensity. And if he can get there, he's still got a fair way to build into his body. He still looks like a pretty young key player. And as Jeff White said, it takes a long time for these bigs to grow into their body, and it's often not linear, the progression, particularly for the bigs. And JVR was good, but like, you want him to really tear apart a game. But how many goals did he get? He kicked 2. So, but I think it might be a moot point because surely he comes back in with AJ going out, but this week. So, a lot to like about the game. Looks like a beautiful ground as well. Speaking of nice grounds,
apart from the concrete wall on one side.
Yeah, the tramway. Is that the tramway ground?
The tramway. Yeah. You don't want to go too far out of bounds on the other side.
No.
All right, let's get into changes. And Jack 𝗍ine has now missed 4 games. And what did the guy who hit him get? 1 week? Due to ongoing concussion symptoms from the knock he received in the match against the Eagles in round 8, going into round 13. He was initially picked in the squad to play the Saints, but was held back another week. Let's hope those symptoms have now subsided. Aidan Johnson has been suspended for 2 weeks for his hit on 𝗟𝗍𝗯 Wanganeen-Millera in yesterday's match.
Can I just say, Andy, he's bloody lucky that wasn't worse, because it's exactly the hit that they're trying to outlaw. And to be honest, it's a whole nother conversation. I'd be happy for him to get more. Like, sometimes it's too much weighted on the impact, because it really could have, you just talked about 𝗍ine. It's 3-4 weeks with what looked minimal contact. The head, we need to be protecting players' heads. And to me, that he left the ground, elected to bump, not tackle. We should just ban the bloody bump. He should have tackled in that circumstance. He would have won the free kick, not knocked the guy into next week potentially.
Anyway, so he's out. So big man, followed by George. What are your changes? You've earmarked JVR to come in for Aidan Johnson.
And I wouldn't mind bringing in Jeffo as well. I would like to see us, because somebody's got to go into the ruck again, and we're going to run into the same problem again of having a single tall left in the forward line. We can afford to lose one. Someone like Sharp, for me, would be the obvious one. We've already got enough small forwards running around in there with Melcham and Fritsch and Chandler. So I'd be happy to bring in Jeffo as well.
Laurie will come out.
He'll
come. Yeah,
AJ's out. Laurie's out.
Laurie out. 𝗍ine, unless he's got symptoms, he's back in.
Yeah, but the other concerns I had in particularly looking at this the game in Alice Springs was how tired our younger players in Langford and Lindsay and Windsor again all looked really, really tired.
They weren't the only ones.
Even if they're not loading, it's understandable. They get the wall mid-season.
We looked lethargic. They were the only ones, because a lot of players, senior ones included, looked lethargic and slow and tired.
But they're the ones that are really affecting. We saw what happened to Windsor last year, the same sort of thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of those gets rested.
I would, just because I reckon we're putting a lot of our eggs in this King's birthday basket. So I agree, though. I take your point entirely. And I looked actually at the pressure stats. Again, it's a really good indication of effort level, because that's all it is. It's all effort. I think it was only 4, maybe 5 players who had more pressure points than their season average. Out of 23, that's, probably 12 out of 22.
Surprise me based on what I saw.
Well, yeah, it just shows that it's exactly that point. I think they played fatigue, but I think those young guys are really. But that puts Langford's game in context. He's our 4th highest rated player. He's an impressive young lad, and the thing I really like is his marking, his one-on-one marking. He's going to be a weapon that you can throw forward.
He's only going to get better.
Yeah, but I wish Lindsay had kicked one of those goals, for God's sake. He had time on
even the
space
sets,
on both of them.
The one on the right, the sets. He should be. I want him to be nailing both of those.
Oh, one was a set shot. Oh, that's right. The second one, but it was the second one where he had time to balance.
Yeah.
The other one I think there has to be questions about is Lever. That T-Mac for Lever.
Yeah.
Lever looked really out. He just looked all at sea.
Possibly one of the worst games I've seen him play for us.
One-on-one, he's not a great one-on-one player, is he?
But he's not that Lever. He's not performing in the way we expect him in the coming over the top for that punch, which is necessary when the everyone else is engaged. He just wasn't doing it in this game. He just looked so far out of the rhythm of the game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see T-Mac in this week for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, he takes a bit of time to get going. I would be surprised, but I can see your point totally. Look, T-Mac's played better than Lever has in the last 2 weeks in every single one of his games, hasn't he? So.
All right, well, it's that time of year again. One of the marquee fixtures on the AFL calendar, the King's birthday clash at the MCG between two of the league's oldest rivals, Melbourne and Collingwood. It's more than just 4 points on the line. It's a blockbuster that brings over 80,000 fans to the G and raises crucial awareness and funds for Neil Danaher and the fight for the MMD cause, and it carries with it the weight of recent finals battles, some fierce rivalries, and it could very well determine the Demons' fate this season. Collingwood have had the wood over the D's in recent years, with the Pies winning 6 of the last 7 clashes, but Melbourne comes into this match desperate to make a statement and stay in touch with the top 8, while Collingwood is looking to consolidate their top spot on the ladder. George, followed by Ben, man. Give a preview of the match.
This is the big freeze match, but I don't think we're going to need to have the ice buckets out there for this weekend, because the forecast is something like 14 degrees and 15 millimetres of rain. So
that might help us.
That could well help us, because watching Collingwood playing against Hawthorn last week, they were frighteningly good.
Very good team.
Absolutely frighteningly good.
Well
and I hate saying that about Collingwood.
Do yourself a favour. Watch Jeff White's his video for this week. It'll scare you. Because what Hawthorn were doing is exactly what Trapp will fall into. So
what was really noticeable apart from the speed and the skill that was displayed by Collingwood was Hawthorn actually took it up to them in the first quarter. I think they matched them for tackles in the first quarter. By the end of the game, it was 80-39 in Collingwood's favour. They were just ruthless. They just did not give the Hawks a chance to do anything. Absolutely denied them the opportunity to use their skills at all in the game. So, in a way, I think we're going to be fortunate that if the game is wet and slow and more contest-based, that we've got a better chance. But, boy, they really apply the pressure in a big, hard way when they do.
I'm actually really bullish about this game. I think we'll win. And partly it's to do with what I said before, is that I think that we've timed our high performance to be peaking for this game and to be in optimal shape to win this game. And I suspect that the Collingwood have done the opposite. And because we, as George noted a few weeks ago about Brisbane, if you're going to have a heavy load into a match, you're going to do it against a team that you don't see as a direct competitor, and Collingwood would have us in that boat. I actually hope it's dry, wet weather. It's for me one of the greatest myths in footy. It'll just exacerbate the skill difference. Their brilliant kickers will come to the fore, and that cannot be good for us. We're playing a very similar game to Collingwood. We're interestingly, all of the talk, Collingwood, people think about them winning the flag in 23. They're playing really differently to how they were in 23. They're the slowest team in the AFL by some margin in moving the ball after a mark or free kick. And they're super, super patient. And their sort of methodology is to chip it around, to hold it, to take the full 30 seconds around the ground, stoppages after a free kick and mark, and being really judicious with their ball use, and their and then when they go fast, and so they are still transitioning well from the back half. Stats and lies and all of those things. Damn statistics. I'll give you one that's for the stat haters out there is kicking efficiency. Melbourne is number 2 in the AFL for kicking efficiency, and Collingwood are mid-table. And so if you want to have a case for why our stats are of little value, that's that one, because some of their kicking against Hawthorn, George, was just magnificent under pressure.
Just elite.
Oh, just elite. And I don't know, I've got what's his, Elliott. His kicking for goal is metronomic, isn't it? It is just a thing of beauty, technique, the same every time. If you look at 20 matches across and the shot in each match, it'd be hard-pressed to work out which, if you just saw him and a tight shot of him, it'd be hard to work out which match. He's such a good player, such a good kick, and they've got good kicks across all the lines that take on difficult kicks and kick back into the corridor and on the angle kicks. The thing, though, that's super impressive about them this year is they're number 1 for least scores by opponents. So their defensive system, which Jeff White, is that what he covers in that video that he did of the Pies Hawthorn game?
He was talking about when Hawthorn gets the ball, or when the opposition gets the ball, Collingwood sort of run off in a V out from there, just cutting off the angle, having a guy running off not just in a V, but having a guy, 10 metres, 20 metres, 30 metres along those lines.
Yep.
So when they look that way and when they look that way, they're just seeing a line of Collingwood's players.
Well, one of the things that they do really, really well is get back on turnover. Yeah. So they got players with serious wheels. Quaynor is one of my favourite players outside of Melbourne. He's brilliant one-on-one on those small, small forwards. They all get back hard.
That's what he was talking about. He was talking about their high half forwards get back really hard into defence. Along those lines,
work hard, but also the other way, the half-back flank, they go, they move back and forward. And, I mean, George mentioned tackles. They're 3 in the AFL for tackles per game. They're in really good shape. They've got a really good structure. The game plan, mitigates when they've had big outs. They had, they've rested 2 weeks ago 4 or 5 of their senior players. They had injuries, as well, and they just rely on their structure, which when we're playing our best footy in 21, that's what we talked about on the podcast. It doesn't matter who comes in because they're slotting into the system. That's where we're trying to get. That's where Goody is trying to get us too. And I really think that we've taken big elements of their game plan. Their game plan's really similar, or our game plan's really similar. There's probably a fair way of saying it, as I said a couple of weeks ago, with a bit of Lions chucked in there for us. But super team, I think, but I'm really confident we'll win this game. Partly because I think that we're prepared. We've circled in the before the season when they plan the whole season's program out to the minute. I think we've circled that in our calendars as a must-win game, and I would not be surprised if the opposite is true of Collingwood. Not so much that they want to win it, but that they're coming into the bye. I think both teams are coming into the bye, aren't they? Or did Pies have their bye this week?
No, they played Hawthorn on Friday night.
Yeah, of course, they played Hawthorn. So they're both coming into the bye the following week, I think. Of course, they played Hawthorn. I wonder whether they'll actually be doing the reverse to us. But yeah, I'm really confident, and I think that we'll look to stifle them, and we'll look to use those forward handball chains. But again, like I said before, when we're talking to Jeff White, we'll be able to tell in the first 10 minutes if we're on and bringing the pressure, and we can bring 200 pressure. If we can average the sort of pressure we did against the Swans, we're a chance of beating anyone in the AFL, and that includes Collingwood, even though I think they're the probably equal best team going around at the moment. I'm really, really confident we'll win this game.
They utilise a really great weapon in the sense that their small forwards in particular really press up high in defence
and get involved.
And as soon as Collingwood get the ball, the solution is kick the ball just straight down the ground, and you'll see Elliott and you'll see Bobby Hill sprint towards the goal line. It was amazing. I lost track of the number of times that they kicked goals from the goal square in the game against Hawthorn, because there was no Hawthorn players within miles of them. They have got some serious speed going back into attack, and I don't know that we have to match them.
Feast on us.
And the other thing that they do really well, that we've doing well in our wins, in particular the Sydney game, is score in their forward half, like score from turnovers in their forward half, and partly that's about their ball winning ability from their forwards. They just win contests, don't they? And but I mean, so if we bring our tackling pressure, they've got 2 big outs. Lipinski is HIA, isn't he? He's out with concussion, and Schultz is out as well, isn't he?
That's no loss.
Well, it's one of those small forwards, sort of medium forwards that we do struggle a little bit to cover. So
they've still got Hill and Elliott. So
still got Hill and Elliott, but Steve May could take Elliott, for instance, and match up on him. I wouldn't be shocked if that comes to pass. Or I'm as I said, I'm really confident about this game.
Well, I think we're going to leave it there for tonight. We'll be back next week on Tuesday to break down our round 13 match against the Pies, which is on Monday. If you want to listen to the show live as it happens, please head on over to demonland.com on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And thank you, as always, your questions and comments are an integral part of the show. So thank you to our Demonland posters who submitted questions and comments. Thank you to Demon Cat, Outside 50, Doug Reamer, Rostar, Sam 6172, Dark Horse 72, Wells 11, Spirit of Norm Smith, Billy Bean, Dr. Gonzo, and apologies to Lazy, Disco Stew 17, El Diablo 14, Ross Milan. The Pearl had a question as well, but couldn't get to it, so George. Monocular, Rollo 2, D Old Fart, Bring Back Barassi, Buck Naked, GS 1905, Bay Riffin, Adina 88, Pitmaster, and Harvey Wallbanger. Thank you, of course, to Jeff White, who was a wonderful guest. Loved it. That was great. And thank you to my co-hosts, George and Binman. And thank you to our loyal listeners. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review and a comment on Apple Podcasts, and we'll read it out on the show next week. Go Demons.
Go Red Leggers.
Come on, Demons. Come on, Demons. got this feeling